The program committee has twisted my arm to ask 3 questions on 3 topics. We're going to do climate change, the new jail, and how substance abuse and mental illness inform homelessness, and what the city and the county can do about all of these 3 topics. Thinking is we'll take about 10 minutes on each of those 3. We have a 4th in reserve in case highly unlikely we're running short. And then open it up to you folks at about 1 o'clock, maybe a little earlier, to ask questions. So, you guys ready? Okay. Climate change is one of those problems that doesn't respect borders. So the city and the county really have to work together with that. Last month, we heard about the city's climate action task force, and if you weren't here, and I'd strongly recommend you go and take a look at the video. But starting with you, Seth, what does the mayor's office plan to do about the climate action task force and climate issues in general, which may not be addressed by them? And then when Seth is through, we'll go directly to Satpal.
Okay. First off, thank you for having us today. Satpal, for your benefit. This is a mic that works really close to the lips. Yeah. No, it's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to be here in a context that is not campaign related. Yes, hallelujah. Man. So, first off, just contextually, I would offer the observation that I join lots and lots of community members who take the climate science very seriously. It's a legitimate, real concern. It's arguably the most important concern that faces us. I said, as I recall, at the last, in August, when we were here last, that I had, in 2015, the experience of learning a great deal about climate. I joined a number of climate committees. This, of course, was directly following my experience losing to State Senator Doug Erickson, who had very different views on climate than I. And I simply mentioned that by way of leading up to the fact that we had a very strange year in 2015. You might recall that it was essentially sunny every day from late February until October. It was just bizarre. And as a lifelong, there's the sweet spot, as a lifelong Northwesterner, while so many people I know were sort of excited about the sunshine, I was straightforwardly depressed by it. It was just bizarre that springtime, when it rains, it was sunny. So fast forward to some things. The last couple of years, I was involved in the county climate action task force. We, of course, were following closely what the city was doing. The city was doing a lot of really good work with the task force. And now I find myself in the position of overseeing a staff that is intimately involved in moving the dial. Of course, the obligation of all governments on Earth, international, national, subnational, counties, cities, every government on Earth needs to take this issue seriously. So we're taking it seriously in Bellingham. I have the support of a city council that unanimously supports the efforts that we're doing. You recall in 2018 there was a climate action plan that was updated, and it describes a lot of ambitious targets just within that. Shortly thereafter, there was a resolution to support being more ambitious. Actually, I think the initial climate action plan update might have been in 2017. The resolution that followed was to be even more ambitious. There was a commitment for people to achieve those things, and then, of course, the task force. The task force was charged with coming up with measures that would, if implemented, would substantially move the dial in Bellingham in reducing emissions. So that's sort of where we're at. So what we're doing, and when I say we at this moment in time, I'm talking about staff members who are involved in the effort. I think I saw Renee LaCroix here. She's works in Public Works as the Natural Resources Manager. Just raise your hand, Renee, just for the fun of it, so I feel better. There you are, way over there. Thank you, Renee. We recently hired a new staff person, Seth Vidania, who we plucked from Western, who is engaged in sustainability work there. So we have a team of folks, and that's just a couple of them. What we're doing is trying to map out and establish a framework which we can then follow, and it's sort of two-tiered, I would say. One, of course, is following the dictates and requirements in the existing climate action plan for the city, which, as I said, requires some ambitious efforts. I directed the department head staff just last Thursday at our directors meeting to this year dramatically elevate the priority of taking climate action. So I've challenged and requested that all of the department heads look at operations to see where they can squeeze out further reductions just this year, pursuant to the existing climate action plan. And then sort of a second tier, of course, is what do we do with the task force recommendations? I think we've broadly agreed that the framework for that would be kind of like docketing a comprehensive plan amendment through a process that we are still crafting, and we hope in the second half of March we'll unveil the plan for how to proceed in that regard to the City Council and ask for their blessing. And we would, as I see it, craft out the large targets, you know, the efficiencies, land use, transportation, local energy production. You just go right down the list of the broad categories that relate to where we're going to get emission reductions, and then take the task force recommendations and identify which task force recommendations are uniquely new, do not have existing parts in the existing climate action plan, which ones are truly new net additive, and identify the ones that we want to carve off for inclusion in our existing climate action plan as an amendment. Do I have time limit?
Yes. Yes and no. We need to get through.
I'm going too long, aren't I?
Not yet.
The 2 minutes each. My apologies.
No.
So we're working on this very earnestly. We're doing a lot of really good work, and I'm pleased with everything we're doing, and I'll get back and amplify.
We'll give you more time in a bit.
I apologize. I really
No
Okay,
problem.
I'll be more quicker. So, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, for supporting me to be sitting here today. Thank you. I think that we are a little bit behind the city's task force. County updated their environmental footprint or task or the report was back in 2007. And our committee is working, and we lost 2 members. One is him; he became mayor, and Alex Remmel, he went to Olympia. So, but we did reconstitute that, and we are working on it. And a couple of things I want to share with you is that throughout last year, I have said openly that climate change is not a hoax. It's real, and we can't wait another 10 years and then say, oh, what the heck these guys were doing in 2020, right? And we all try to do that. And we should be doing that today, that what our kids or grandkids will think in 2040, what we are doing today, because it's important for us to do today. So one of the things I've said that we should do an audit of the whole county operations, and I have started talking to the county advisory committee, climate advisory committee, as well as the department heads, that we should get a template from another city. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Maybe other cities, other jurisdictions or counties have done this kind of study, that to do an environmental audit. This is buildings, the vehicles, transportation, as well as our habits or habits of doing work and purchasing policies. I think those are in the purview that what we can do. We can do in three things. Something we can do immediately that can be done within current rules and things, okay, things we can change, which county executive can change. There are things which are midterm, like 2 to 5 year scale, that where we can do that. There are things which are like 10, 15 year, like if you want to do electrification or you want to change your buildings or some other things which will take time. And so that's how we are thinking about it. Now, the other thing is that if you remember, I've been talking about planting 1 million trees. And yes, thank you. And we already had a group formed. We already had our first meeting. The next meeting is actually next week, 2 weeks from now. And we would like to get the whole community involved in that. 1 million tree is just a number. We could do 2, 3, 5 million. It not just get hung up on 1 million. But, because I think that has been recognized. I've been talking about it for the last couple of 3 years, but it has been recognized internationally that people have said, the United Nations have said 1 trillion trees is our answer. Now, there is no one single answer to our climate challenge. There are many. And this is just one of them. And among those challenges are, the electrification, transitioning from fossil fuels to other fuels. Even our lifestyle. We in America, have a very, very lavish lifestyle. And we just take it for granted because all these things are available to us. But we have to start thinking in your own personal carbon footprint as well, because that's how it makes difference. A lot of times we think, a lot of people have come to me, what would this 1 million trees would do, or what one city would do. But that's how it starts. There is no magic thing that whole world or whole United States gonna one day wake up and adopt something and say, this is what we're gonna do starting today. So I think that's where I am trying to work with whosoever I come in contact with or wherever I have some say, that do something, because this is very important. So we'll stop here and go to the next one.
Well, no, your comments have given rise to a question. It sounds at this point as if you're working in parallel. And my question is, how do you plan to cooperate and encourage each other's governments?
Well, first off, I would just say it's a commitment. Satpal and I know each other, we like each other, and we're going to work well together.
We have good friends, so.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been on councils and committees, and sure.
Yeah, so many of the things that have been identified in our climate action plan, and so many of the things that were identified in the task force recommendations, of course, have parallel in at the county. And of course, keep in mind, it's not just the organizational entity known as the County of Whatcom and the City of Bellingham, where 2-3% of emissions come from. We're talking about the private community at large, and so your observation about behavioral change is, of course, huge. No, I'm confident there's going to be a great deal of sharing between the city and the county.
I was going to just add that this is not unimaginable that we may have only one climate advisory committee for the whole county, which will include small cities also. Right now, this was the reaction from last year or 2018, let's do something. And city and county went and started doing something. Now, the one thing is that Seth is lucky he has more cooperative counsel. And
But you do have a majority. Yeah.
Okay, topic number 2 is the jail. The voters have turned down jail proposals twice by large margins. Satpal, the county, is the one that administers the jail, so let's start with you.
yes, I think that when we just say the word jail, it's not a good word. Because jail is actually one small part of what our issue and what our problem is, and what we have been struggling with for not only last 5-7 years, it probably goes back 15-18 years. And the issue is that who should be in the jail, who should not be in the jail. And you know, being a poor, have a mental issues or behavioral issues, jail has become the last resort of our mental services. That's bad, but that's the policy we as a nation created after 1980s. And it takes a little time, and it's caught up with us, because we never saw that just eliminating mental institutions is the solution. Yes, it was a terrible thing, and it needed to be eliminated. And after elimination, it was just a vacuum, left to the local governments to do without any funding. But that's not an excuse. But this is where the lay of the land is. But what we are facing, let me come together now, because time is limited. The council just approved a needs assessment study a couple of weeks ago. The whole purpose is the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force has been working since 2017 for 3 years, and a lot of things have been done. You know, when Mr. Ritchie became a county prosecutor, just after 40 years of one type of administration, he has been able to do certain things in our community without changing any law, without going to the council, without doing, and these are the things that people in that chair can do, and which is a positive thing. At least it is a start. Now, what we have worked last few months is with the sheriff's department, prosecutor department, and the county administration. And of course with some other people consulting, mainly the task force. This needs assessment is a continuum of services assessment, that what are the behavioral health services or mental health services needs are, not only inside the jail or institution, what we need outside, so that it's like a prevention, cure, and maintenance. You know, it's a continuum that what we really need to solve. And the second part is the alternates to incarceration. We must put money behind it. We can't just say, oh, let's find alternates. Alternates mean that you're not putting that person for whatever reason in custody, but just releasing them is not the answer. Just say, okay, we're not going to arrest you. What do you do? So that's where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are communities, I think America woke up in after 2000 that how much incarceration we have been doing, and many cities, counties, jurisdictions have tried new ways, and that's what we are trying to do that too. But we thought it's better to learn from the experts, so we have Jay Farbstein and Dr. Robin Timmy. Those two people are experts in behavioral health related to incarceration and outside of incarceration. So the first phase of this thing is running from like today or last week on to end of June. And that's what the first needs assessment study is, that what are the other communities are doing. And we have shared all the paperwork from 2015 failed initiative all the 2017 failed initiative, all the lessons we have learned from the public's strong opinion and strong rejection of the ballot measure. So this is lessons learned. So we have put everything in front of them. This is what our community's mind is. This is where our community wants. That's why they need a specific outcome of this needs assessment, and that is the continuum of the things, and brick and mortar is our last priority. So a couple of things I want to share with you that which we have talked, which is not in the writing. One is, we talked about that this facility becoming to be rented to ICE or for other things. I am suggesting that there should be a wording, not on the ballot, but in the document, that if anything like that happen, it should be on the ballot again. No future county executive, no future council can arbitrarily decide that it is profitable or it saves us money, so we should rent our facility. It should be you, the public, who should decide that. Because the county government, the county council need to build that trust which they have lost over the last 20 years. And we cannot keep crying over the spilt milk. It happened, it was bad, but we cannot keep punishing our future because something bad happened in the past. So we got to move forward. So that's one thing we think that would be, the other thing is that when we get X dollars from the tax, if it goes to that point, my thought is that we should allocate that X dollars would go to behavioral health, means allocated. Y dollars will go to alternates to incarceration, and remaining dollars will go to brick and mortar. And no future county executive or council should change those minimums without a ballot initiative. That's what happened last time, that people approved, they did the Division Street facility, and after a while they were short on operations or short on this and that, and whatever circumstances were, the money was diverted, and people are totally upset about it. And I think that should not happen again, right? So that's where we are with this kind of mandate. We are trying to work with that. There will be a meeting on March 5th, the consultants are coming. Then March 12 or 15, I don't remember the date, there's a stakeholders advisory committee meeting. We have 37 people, and there is a majority on the stakeholder advisory committee is public, not elected or employees of the city, county, or small cities. So there's a majority of public to give their opinion. There is a separate technical advisory committee, which we do need from the electeds as well as the other people. So that's what our plan is in short. I know this is not total justification of what we are doing, but there will be more we will share.
Good. Well, Seth, the city is the major customer of the jail. And
They are paying customer.
a major customer. And when people with substance abuse or mental health and other issues are released from the jail, they end up primarily, not exclusively, primarily on the city streets. So what's your feelings, your input as the city to the county's plans?
So the city has, of course, a major role in all of this. We'll be one of the contractors to the new facility. There's going to be a lot of work and collaboration that goes into that process. We are the city with the largest population that's going to be contributing taxation for the building of this facility. That gives us some important say in how it goes. Of course, we're the land use regulator for it. In the event that it is built within the city, I don't know if that's technically, there seems to be support for that. I just, as far as context, you mentioned 16, 18 years. I recall so distinctly being on the county council 2003, 2004, when we were doing our first comp plan update, and we of course had to flag major facilities, and that's when the jail came up. And maybe to try to look at this whole issue in a light that's favorable to the reality that it's not done yet, is the fact that there's been a dramatically improved, I would say, increased and improved consciousness around issues of social justice in the meantime. There's now, I think it's fair to say, a demand for the behavioral health component that you mentioned, dramatically increased commitment to alternatives, things of that nature. The idea of a vertical jail downtown, which I remember years ago the lawyers very much supported, smaller facility. So it's just a much better proposal this time. There's been a lot of important work that I think it's fair to say was headed up by Councilmember Barry Buchanan in trying to identify problems that existed before and addressing them in intelligent ways. Bellingham has a lot of the, I'd say, political energy on this issue that accounted for a considerable amount of the opposition to a couple of the last proposals, and I sense that those are going to be addressed this time, so a political obstacle, I think, will be removed. So Bellingham has a large role in a lot of different ways, and I'm feeling more confident than I ever have, at least in recent years.
I just want to add one thing, that your input is very critical. I would say rather than activism, I think involvement with the process is more productive. Everybody has their own views, which is totally respected. But what we have tried to do in this RFP, or talking to the consultant, that please engage with the public as much as possible, because we want input from all corners of our county and Bellingham residents. And so try to find time, cancel some other dinner meeting, some other things, and meeting with friends. Go in front of these people and express yourself. Like going with placards and going with opposition, yes, you have everybody right to do that. I'm not saying that you cannot do that, but I'm saying please don't do that, because it is totally unproductive. It cuts down the dialogue. It revolves the dialogue around you are right, I'm right, you're right, I'm right. And the real issues never get heard. And it hurts all of you together. As a community, we've been hurting because our concentration is not solving the problem, but enunciating the problem in 10 different ways. Everybody has their own way of describing the problem. We get it. We have a problem. Come there with 5 solutions. I think it will be a productive thing for all of us.
Moving to another intractable problem, which we all describe separately. Homelessness is composed of a number of problems, is informed by a number of problems. And what you've been calling behavioral health, and I've been calling people with substance abuse or mental health problems, are a component of the homelessness problem. What sorts of plans do you think you can implement, what studies, to alleviate that part of the homelessness issue? Seth, let's start with you.
Well, you're right. It's an enormous problem, and it is profoundly complex. And the solution to it isn't just a local one. I know I beat this drum, but I think it's a legitimate drum to beat. We're not going to be able to ultimately address this problem just at the local level, because it's such a dynamic issue with so many incoming parts. It's going to, at some point in time, require real fundamental reform at the federal level, and to a lesser extent at the state level, that addresses systemic inequality in this nation. That's just sort of a basic observation. But we, at the local level in Bellingham, are, in my view, doing an impressive job. One of the things that I've been able to see much more closely since I became mayor 6.5, 7 weeks ago is working with just a remarkable group of people, not only at the city of Bellingham, although I'm blown away with the capability and the competence and the professionalism and the commitment, but also lots of other organizations that we partner with that come to the table and are committed to doing just this really impressive work, complicated work, in the most humane way possible. A friend of mine who's very involved in these issues, when I asked him, what do we need, pointed out that to a large extent we've created successfully a machinery, if you will, maybe that's the wrong metaphor, but a framework that is effective and comprehensive, and what we need are increased resources. So there's a lot of effort right now that we've been tracking in the legislature to increase funding. There's a bill that's still live, and we'll know in the next couple of weeks whether or not Bellingham might succeed in getting what we think could be, we don't even know the exact number yet, but it's 35 million statewide, potentially. We might get a couple million of it. And the question is going to be, how do we deploy it? One of the broad observations over the last year or two, you recall only 2 years ago there was talk about building one enormous facility, and we weren't able to site it. And again, looking at the glass half full, perhaps that was a good thing in retrospect, because there's been much more commonality in agreement with the idea that we need individual shelters that are situated for particular unique populations. So I would just observe that of all the various groups that I'm on, including the homeless working group that meets this Friday, it's stakeholders and variety of organizations that comprise pretty much the comprehensive group that is working on these issues, and they are committed, and it's all about bang for the buck. Most of the time there's consensus about how we should proceed. So I'm feeling pretty good about the effort that's going to address this issue. I think we're going to be able to address it about as well as any community can. But again, it's going to be ongoing, and it's going to require more public funding. We've got a lot of resources locally, the mental health sales tax. We've got a home fund in Bellingham. I was at a conference not long ago and talked to lots of Association of Washington Cities, and talked to lots of other cities who don't have the local funding sources that we do. We're way ahead of a lot of other communities, and we just need to keep with it.
I would submit, I'd submit that the city is way ahead of the county, but again, this is a problem that does not respect municipal lines.
Yeah.
So, Satpal.
Yeah. So I agree with what Seth has described. Another way to look at it is there are two parts of this problem. The one part is, what do we do now? Means the people we have in that situation, how do we handle them, provide them services, don't put them in jail. I mean, jail is the most expensive thing, you know, $70,000 a bedroom or one cell you are all willing to spend $70,000, but nobody is willing to spend $10,000 on the kids who are 0 to 12. That's where our solution is. But we cannot think beyond tomorrow. We need to start thinking 10, 20 years. If we start something with our early childhood learning and child care and all these issues, we will not be spending $70,000 per person 20 years from today. But nobody wants to think in 20 years term. They want to balance the budget today, want to spend the thing today. They want to see a person in front of them. What do we do about this person? And spend the money there, and then they say, we solved the problem. So I think that we should start thinking in those terms. The other thing is money is not the solution. If money was the answer, we are the richest nation in the world. We are the most educated nation in the world. We should not be having any problems. We have all the money, right? So, and this goes into our household and our society, our communities as well. Money is, it's the plan. And the plan, when plan is more than 2 years along, we lose it. I think that's, to me, this is the biggest thing. And that's what, this is related to the previous question about behavioral health and incarceration and everything. These are all interrelated. They are not separate issues. Homelessness, all this is a continuum of our problems, and it hits rich families, poor families, the same, alike. So I think that from that perspective, that one of the things we are missing, we don't have trained behavioral health care professionals. We have a lot of teachers, we have a lot of general graduates, because our education system is totally unrelated to the needs of our society. We spend a lot of money educating our kids, but not what society needs. There is a big disconnect, and that is another long-term problem. So I think that, I've been talking last year that maybe we should talk to Western, maybe we should talk to Whatcom Community College. Why can't a teacher who has a teaching degree and can't find a job, why can't they take another 1 or 2 years? We should fund that. By the way, we should fund that. The education is becoming a haves and have-not issue. And let them get the education in behavioral health, CDMH, or whatever the professional designation is, and become gainfully employed and fulfill a very important function in our society. I think that's what I can think of.
Well, I've got a list of questions. I have a little list, but I think it's time to turn the questioning over to the folks out here. There will be a microphone on this side that Chuck Snyder will have, and a microphone that Dan, and I've forgotten your last name, Dan, but whatever. Dan has. As always, members showing their badges get first crack at this. Once again, I don't think we're going to run out of questions, but we can get somebody if we need one. And I'd remind you to keep your questions short and to the point. If you're talking, we're not hearing from a guest. Okay, we'll start over here.
So this is a question primarily, this one you don't need to get too close to your mouth. This is a question primarily to Satpal, but I'd like Seth to respond to it as well. You have said several times that we need to lower the temperature.
Yeah.
We need to have dialogue and not be in each other's face.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific programs or ideas or plans of how to try to accomplish that?
Yes. The very simple thing is just go talk to people. So right after, few days after the election, when it became clear that I did succeed, the first people I called was P66. Because everybody was saying they put $170,000 to a PAC against me. That's the first people I called. I said, I want to come have a coffee with you. The second people I talked to was BP. I have called GOP chair, Kathy Kirshner, who is also on the council, that please find time in your next general meeting. I would like to come and address you. There is no magic formula. This is how I found in my life is just go talk to people. There is nothing saying I'm coming to close the gap. There is no science for that, close the gap. It's just open the dialogue. I went to BIAW meeting. They are having a meeting with the realtors. I'm going there. They are probably getting a canoe for me. So I told him, I'm happy. I will charge $100, have picture with me with the canoe. And we'll give the money to charity. I mean, I'm just not making it too light, but I'm saying is reach out to people. I'm going to, I went to the Lummi council meeting immediately. I went to Nooksack council meeting immediately. That's all it is. They say we are willing to work with you. Because, you know, the thing is, people down under, everybody is the same. It's just that who takes the first step, sit down and talk. We may not agree on everything. That's not the point here that I'm coming to you, you must follow me. If we have this rule that everything happens according to my wishes, then where would you go? This is our biggest problem, is everybody wants things to happen their way. I'm right, you're wrong. It doesn't work.
You know, one of the things that Satpal and I can do in our positions is to just be mindful of and commit to respectful communications, and very intentionally realize that we're not going to join one balkanized side of an equation and be just a champion for that voice. We're going to respectfully listen to both sides. And one of the observations I've had just with myself internally, that I've come to realize, is that much of what I think about as I approach different groups to communicate, and this I think relates to the community at large, is I see an opportunity for myself in how I comport myself that has some bearing on how the emotional tenor of the community. There are so many groups that we're dealing with, even in Bellingham, that are just ready to go at it and express their point of view. And it's always the same human group dynamic. There's often an ego and an identity held by a leader, and they're championing for something. And we need to just recognize the need to take a step back, take a deep breath, go into it with the realization that we're going to listen to both sides and respect the point of view of both sides. And that's something that I want to continue doing. I look forward from the city angle as it relates to, I'll just pick an issue, and there's several of them. Housing is one example. We've got a lot of different points of view about how we're going to go about densifying with the city. And we've got some strong leaders on both sides of those equations. I would like them to come together and engage in interest-based mediation, and that's something that I'm going to promote. And there's a number of areas in which I see benefits from doing that. So thank you, that's a good question.
Over here.
Hi, in the discussions about housing tonight, or this afternoon, is mostly focused around mental health. And while I completely agree that mental health and substance abuse is a factor in homelessness, it didn't happen in the last 10 years that all of a sudden that many more people became addicted and mentally ill that we now see on our streets. And so I'd like to ask the two of you, what do you think the role of the very high cost of rent and mortgages in Bellingham plays in homelessness?
That was the topic number 4 that we would have brought out. Thank you.
Yes, it is a problem. We are seeking the solution. There's a market solution. Market solution is make as much money you can, and then we'll worry about this thing later. It's not that this problem is unknown. Problem is known, but how do you change that? Now, there's only, you guys pay us, not pay to your government so much taxes. Where we put that? If the people coming from one perspective, they say, put it all in housing. Is it possible to put all the money into housing? This is what I have proposed to the developers and builders. And I'm just sharing with you because I just shared with Small Cities Conference. If 1,000 people in our community, companies, developers, put $50,000 each into a workforce housing fund, that's $50 million. This is not charity. This is not charity. This is they're putting money, and this money can be given a long-term loan for the land and for the development, so that then they can sell the house only what the house cost is. And this they can recover over the next 30, 50 years. They are willing to pay $10,000 to the employee who is going to leave to the retention bonus. They may have 200, 300 employees. Are you willing to invest money for your own workforce housing? What do you come to government for? When they come to government, they say, give us no development fees. Yeah, so I tax everybody and give you the money. I said, surprise, we don't print money. We just take it from you and use it for your services. So if you come to us, say we are developers and we need money, have you thought about lowering your profit? Have you thought about doing something else? So put your money into our own community and have the affordable housing for long term and reduce the pressure on the rent also. So there are many things that we can do, but this is not only government's job. This is a society we have, and we have to change our own thinking how we do this.
So,
Yeah, we can.
so first off, I'd frame it just at the highest level with the broad observations that first, of course, we all know that wages aren't keeping up with the cost of housing for a number of factors, including in-migration with people moving here with greater means, and the housing units not being built fast enough. The other observation that contextualizes this is the fact that, in my view, you have to answer a couple of basic questions about how we're going to accommodate more building. Are people going to be moving to the Pacific Northwest in increasingly large numbers? And the answer to that, in my view, is yes, without any question. Secondly, we live in a county with valuable natural resource lands. And we're in broad agreement that we don't want cities to completely overtake the natural resource lands of Whatcom County. Ergo, the inference being we've got to build largely within a footprint. Can we have some strategic expansions over time? Yeah, we can consider that, but largely we're going to have to densify within the city. So the question is, how do we do that? And that goes to the question of how we actually deliver more housing types. But fundamentally, we have to, by some means, in the city of Bellingham, dramatically increase the supply of potential units. And that's going to, by inference, it's going to require consideration of zoning changes. It's going to require that we give consideration to how to bring in to and online the missing middle housing types. You know, we talk about big apartments over here and single-family homes over here, and there's a whole variety of housing types in the middle that could deliver affordability better. In fact, it might be the means by which we deliver affordability. So we're going to have a community conversation, which I look forward to in my administration, promoting a process by which we review the way in which we're going to bring online missing middle housing in Bellingham. And fundamentally, though, we just need to dramatically increase the supply by various means.
Chuck.
Hi, I'm Barbara Ryan, and I'm so grateful to see both of you where you are and working together. I think there's more potential for city-county cooperation than I've seen in the 30 years that I've lived here. But one of the things, I'm glad you're dealing with problems, but I think there's some also opportunities. One of the things that I think Satpal talked about is that there are capital needs for both the city and the county. The city hall, for example, continues to sink into the garbage dump on which it was built. We need a new library. The county has some of its own challenges, like a jail. And if you looked at the ownership of land around the city and the county, it's a checkerboard. This is a perfect opportunity to try to look at both needs for city and county and to develop some really creative building solutions.
Barbara,
And this
is there a question?
Yes, yeah. Yes. What do you think?
I think I know what you want. I think that is true, and this was one of the meeting Seth and I had already twice on this topic, is developing a next 25, 30-year plan for a joint civic plaza. Because all this land where the municipal court is and Bellingham Police Department is and the parking lots and our health department and that pit there, they are not city or county lands. They are all your lands. You guys all paid for it one way or the other. So if we falsely claim, oh, it's a city land, and you say, no, this is a county land, I think that is not in your best interest. Your best interest is that if we work together and we do joint buildings and joint planning to start with, what your needs are for next 20 years and what our needs are for next 20 years, and if we need a building, maybe build 6 floors and 3 for city, 3 for county, or 1 for this or 2 for this. So I think that Seth totally agrees, and this is just starting point. We've been there 6 weeks, so but we already have been talking on this topic that if we do investment downtown as a county government for next 25, 30 years, I think there will be more private investment happen in downtown to revive our downtown. I could imagine that the Grand Avenue and Prospect Street to be a promenade with walking only all the way to the waterfront. It's possible.
Well, first off, Barbara, nobody from facilities has briefed me yet on the fact that City Hall is sinking into the dump that it was built on. That was news to me. So yeah, there are some conversations, and as Satpal alluded, it's of course extremely preliminary. It's an idea, an observation, and it's a good one. We're going to have to go through a lot of sort of joint internal processes with staff and just sort of narrowing down what. But there are a lot of joint needs. That's fundamentally what we've observed, and we believe that there'll be financial benefits, among other things, to giving that a real look, and we're both committed to doing that. Yeah.
Over here.
This is for both of you. Given that the United States is one of the only industrialized countries over the past couple of years to have actually reduced greenhouse gas emissions, would you agree that on a local, state, and national level that we are doing some things right, and do you accept those findings?
Well, I don't have a study in front of me, but if you say so, we agree that reducing greenhouse gases is a good thing.
Well, we're one of the world's top emitters. So are there creative things that are happening in this country that are positive? Are there innovations happening that we can look at and be excited about and that can give us some hope? Certainly, I would agree with that. But it's also the case that we're the country that is one of only 2 or 3 in the entire world that pulled out of the Paris Agreement. So there's that. But to your question about improvements, I don't know. There's not really a federal plan. We don't have a federal plan at this point in time. We might get one potentially in about a year, but hopefully. But if you're referring to the broad aggregate statistics about the United States and the fact, the claim that emissions have gone down over some period of time, I'll trust you on that if you can cite a good authority on it. I'm not familiar with that fact. I thought that our total emissions have actually gone up in the United States in recent years. But if they've gone down some, that's a good start.
My question is, how do we find out how many children we do have in the whole county who are homeless? I know that in Bellingham we have 400 plus, and we have over 100 who are unaccompanied. And for me, this is something that we've got to have everybody recognize.
I don't have that number, but it is substantial. Even 400 is substantial. Like I said, we are the richest nation, we are the most educated nation, and having 400 or more kids on streets is a shame.
And I know that the point in time count happened in January. I inquired about that just, I believe, yesterday, and was told that they're still in the process of processing those numbers, so we're going to be getting them soon. I do know that the social service providers and the Opportunity Council and the HOT team, et cetera, all of those prioritize families with children, but obviously to the degree there's any homeless children in Whatcom County is completely unacceptable, and I know that there are a lot of efforts to find them.
On my left.
Yes, thank you. My question is for Satpal. The recent flooding we had in the county, with our low...
Can you move?
Satpal. So the recent flooding we had in our county with the low-lying communities, it was really quite dramatic. Lots of families had their homes inundated with water. And now there is coming in the old idea that we need to do quite a bit of dredging of the Nooksack and some of our drainage, natural drainage canals that are in our county. So I'm wondering, as a thumbnail, we do need to somehow help these families and protect them for the future, because there were just too many of them to move everybody up to higher ground. But I'm wondering, what is your process for figuring out some hardening of around these cities and farmsteads and homes without unduly impacting our environment and our fishing and other natural processes? And I know that'll be a tough one, because
Yes,
there's some
no.
real movement for
Yes.
a lot of,
There was a lot of discussion.
stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion at Nooksack Valley School right after the flood. You know, we were all there, and federal and state reps were there as well. Dredging the Nooksack is a big issue. This is relates to the tribal rights. This relates to Army Corps of Engineers. This is not simple thing that you can get some backhoes and go and dredge it. It's not simple as that. We may take maybe 10 years, even if we apply and get a permission. I'm not even sure you can get a permission for that. But one thing we can do is build secondary levees. What has happened, the human habitat is pushing on natural habitat. And it encroaches so slowly, and when the nature comes back with vengeance, and then we realize, and then we try to blame on the nature. You know, why river, why did you come to our house? That's the biggest problem. We could do something, is that that we can create secondary levees, that if the levee overflows, then there is a channel to do that. We could not build in the areas which are low-lying and traditionally we know. The whole city of Houston, or big part of city of Houston, was built knowingly that it's in the floodplain. And they had 2 floods back to back, right? So I think that this is a bigger question. And like I said, whatever we do today, we find out the answers 20 years later. And then we forget about why we made the first decision to start with. And we look at what we are doing today and why it happened. So yes, the river needs its place. And we have only 20 miles of river, you know, starting from Deming to the ocean. We should have a plan to get that water out to the ocean sooner, and it won't come to your house.
I would just amplify on on all of that by saying that this isn't a comment on Satpal or the county. It's really a comment on all local governments. The short answer is that we've done an insufficient amount in preparing for the reality of changes that are coming. We know that we're going to be having less. I've got a sensitive mic. We know that we have. Is this too loud now? Bizarre. We know we're going to have far more water delivered as rain rather than melted snow runoff. We're going to have, I think that what's been happening this year is going to increase in frequency. One of the things that the county climate advisory committee is working on, and we had money that was put in the budget a couple of years ago to hire to commission a consultant to help update the county climate action plan, is to look at high level of things that we're going to, the county is going to have to be working on for adaptation. And the city's going to have to be working on that as well. And precisely what that plan of attack is going to be, hopefully will get further worked out in the coming years. But all of it's going to require, for the city and the county, it's going to require, and the state, the federal government, it's going to require dramatically increased awareness and concentration on these things.
Tim Douglas, first of all, thank you so much for recognizing the full platter that we all have collectively and leading us in sitting down with our fork and knives to get to work and dig in. I have a question specifically on homelessness, again, because it is so troubling. One of the things that I learned and talked with people recently that are working with the most obvious group of homeless people is that the one thing they have in common is they lack the ability or have lost the ability to develop relationships with other people. And so I'm wondering, when a place like Pierce County, just to the south of us, has at least a couple of programs that has successfully re-engages people in relationships with their families and others and get into housing right away. Are you looking specifically at those proven programs, and what do you know about them, and what will you do about them?
That's a good question. One of the beauties of cities, of course, is that they're a laboratory to look at things that are working well and those things that aren't. Tim, I can't answer with precision the details that you request. I am confident, though, that we have housing staff in the city of Bellingham who are dedicated to looking at those things. I'm not familiar with the particular program that you're referring to. The city of Bellingham has a lot of individual staff that are dedicated to that very issue. We've got a number of personnel that have come about just by tweaks that have been made only in recent years. We now have a dedicated police officer, behavioral health officer, who's on the street working with intensive management folks from the Opportunity Council. They're working so there's a lot more people on the street seeking to address those issues. I think the stats are 600 to 700 people that identify as unsheltered. 75% of them self-identify as having some form of either behavioral or mental health issue. Although it is worth mentioning, and this is a little bit of a tangent from what you asked, that contrary to the assumption that they are all in that position because of mental health issues or substance abuse issues, the reality is a substantial number of the people that are homeless are simply homeless. They're people that are capable of managing an apartment. They're simply costed out of the price of rent in our community. That lower rung of people who are on some form of fixed income, they're straight up priced out of the market. And one of the things that we're hoping to do is increase the number of unique shelters for unique populations in that regard. If there is a proven example right down the road of something that Bellingham should be looking at, I'll get on that, and I'll look forward to talking to you in more detail about that.
Just very quickly, I just want to share one of the idea we are exploring further is that in the county side, unincorporated area, we have trailer parks, and some of them have very older trailer park, the trailers or parks. If you do the mathematics, if you take 3 of these trailer homes out and put 15 tiny homes there, 200 square feet or something, and you charge them only $200 a month, you actually make more money than what you're doing with the 3 trailer homes, right? And you accommodate more people. And that is a place which already has a septic, already has a road, has a management, has the facilities, the schools, other things. So that's one thing. I have talked to 3 different trailer park owners just privately. What do you think of this idea? I think they like it, but of course they say the code doesn't allow it. Now that's the problem the government has that they need to do. And same thing is zoning. If somebody has a 1 acre, half acre lot, and we should allow them that if you want to put tiny homes and have some kind of management, I think the issue comes with that is that if you put more than 4 or 5 people or place, then you need a management element of that. And that's why we went to trailer parks, because they already have that element, means that somebody is managing them already. And you know, these trailer parks were the tiny homes from 70s. That's what the issue was. When we didn't want them to come to single family home neighborhoods, we devised a system. Let's build a trailer park and put them there. And only thing what we did was, you know how we separated them? It should be a manufactured home. What difference does it make? Is manufactured in a factory or on site? But that was their method of separating them. And now time has come, we create new trailer parks or tiny home parks.
Okay. This will be our last question, not because we've run out of questions, but because we've run out of time.
Brian Estes, I have a follow-up question about the jail. And this is for Satpal, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the tasking for this needs assessment includes considering the former Ferndale location and not considering renovating the current jail. That's the first question. And the second one, could you elaborate on the process for a ballot measure on jail and diversion services funding this November, and what are the steps to get there?
Okay. First, fixing the current jail. I think I spent 40 years as an engineer and looking at the building. I would not advise my own government, to which I pay taxes, to spend money on that. A lot of people may disagree, but I think that's a very short-sighted decision to fix the current jail. The second part is that, but why is Ferndale on the list? Yes, there are people who are very passionate that it should only be in the city. I personally agree with that. But When I sit on that seat, it's not what my personal opinion is. There is population in our community who wanted that and who would like to vote for that. That's why I said, when this committee comes, this is where you got to make the case to this committee, to this needs assessment, where they see the majority of the population want this jail built at a certain place, otherwise it would fail. Rather than convincing me, an individual, say I should just exclude certain options from the study, I think it is for the citizens. That's a shortcut you want. You got to work for it with what you want. And the work for it is go in front of this study, be a participant in the study, and make your case. Because that's what they're going to report back to the council. Just like saying that let's just not, there was a council member who said, why even do this study? Why spend $600,000? Let's just, if you guys made up your mind to build it in Bellingham, build it in this parking lot, why don't you just go ahead and build it? Would you like that? No. So I think that every citizen has the same right what you assume you have. We should never forget that. So that's why we didn't want to influence that you should pick this, not this. We are commissioning study with your tax dollars, which are coming from everybody. It is your prerogative to get up there and make a case why it is so and what the reasons are. So that was the second. You had the third one, sorry. Yeah, process to the, yes. The process is that this study we have commissioned has there's one reset point. The reset point is in end of June, first week of July, that they are supposed to give us this study, which will put it in front of the public, or they'll gather the public input, put it in front of the council. That's when council decides, should we put it on, do we have enough information and accurate information to put it on the ballot or not? To put it on the ballot, I think August 6 or 7 is the last date. We have to submit all the paperwork to auditor's office to be put it on the ballot. And you back up 2 weeks and 2 more weeks, so it comes like July. That's the first step. If the community decides, no, the council gets this report, no, it's not the right time, then we stop right there. We will stop the contract, we'll spend half of the money, the other half of the money we get it back, or we don't pay them. If we do put it on at that point of time, then this study goes all the way up till November, October, I think, end of October. And November is the election for that. So that is like overall view of the ballot process. Now, we will be discussing the ballot process with the city of Bellingham, with the small cities. We already have a jail use agreement, which was crafted in 2017, which was generally very good, except few things. One is the location and a few other things, and the size. So barring that, the arrangement between the different cities and the county and the per diem charges and all that kind of stuff is pretty much set. So that will be started to negotiate that, because we cannot start that in July. So we have to at least get to some kind of understanding on that part of it. If it goes through, then this is the understanding we have. That's the other thing it would be, to do in parallel for that. So otherwise, it is totally transparent process. If you feel that you are not being told anything, call me. That's all I can say.
Well, thank you very much, County Executive Satpal and Mayor Seth.